All right, so after I did the last video where I took the Big Five personality test, I naturally kind of felt some struggle or apprehension about the idea of being that low in conscientiousness. I don't know if it's just because it's something that I don't feel like I would like to believe about myself, or if I am actually too hard on myself about that front, particularly because I didn't feel like the symptoms or the negative traits of it are things that affect me as seriously as they do, or say they do, in my day-to-day life. With that said, I couldn't help but take it seriously, because if it was accurate, then that's something that at least should be paid attention to and considered and evaluated. So my initial reaction after doing that was to go and write out what does motivate me, since the traits of, or the negative facets of, low conscientiousness are not having a natural tendency towards orderliness or caring exactly about whether or not you have a traditionally successful life, or worrying as much about what people are thinking of your career, or like how you measure up to other people's standards, being able to hold to a schedule well. Those are all things that are apparently issues if you are low on the conscientiousness scale. So again, what I did is I asked myself questions, or wrote out questions that I can ask myself that are stronger motivators based off of the facets of my personality that I'm much stronger in. So agreeableness, I'm fairly high in, particularly the compassion subtrait, extroversion, enthusiasm, openness, both on the intellect and the creative openness scales. So I wrote things down that would be more helpful in my pursuit of, success and self-improvement. And I thought that might be valuable to share, or at least for me to track and talk about. So as far as agreeableness, one of the things that I wrote down was, how can I involve others in this goal or pursuit? How can I cooperate with them? How can I rely on them, or how do they rely on me? Particularly with compassion, I think that's a really important area for me. Is I think if other people rely on me, I feel a really strong need to follow through. So when I think in terms of work, the biggest thing for me is, how does my role help others, particularly people who are suffering or in a difficult position due to outside circumstances, wondering if there's someone relying on me, or if what I can do, or if what I do can make someone else's day better. Also, in terms of extroversion, can I get social contact or interaction out of it? Can I make people laugh? Can I tell a story through this? Can I motivate myself by getting energized with things that do in fact do this? Can I surround myself with people while I'm doing work, while also managing to minimize the downside of getting distracted by the chance to chat and socialize? Trying to figure out if there's a middle ground that I can find with the two is a big facet I already run into in my day-to-day life, but it was, I think, helpful to kind of realize that and put that into words. As far as enthusiasm goes, can I share something new with someone else? I love every time I learn a new fact or read a book, I look up and ask my girlfriend if she knew this, or talk about it. I do the same thing with my dad. I've got to chat him on Facebook Messenger every time. Those are big motivating factors for me. Can I motivate myself by getting energized with things that do this, or what can I do to laugh every morning? The positive feelings, the joy, laughter, a lot of those traits that I guess you kind of consider like sub-facets of happiness are really helpful feelings for me, and they motivate me to do things and get my ass out of bed and work hard every day. also what can I do that would give me an even more optimistic outlook about what is best. I'm typically far more motivated by the upside than deterred by the downside. So if I can sit there and think about an A or B choice, even if it's something as simple as like, should I make this call because I work in sales, is one choice much higher likelihood to produce a positive outcome than the other? Is it more helpful for me to just pick up the phone and make a call even if I haven't thought it through or if I'm overthinking, instead of trying to like rationalize it or being procrastinating just because I don't feel like I've thought the conversation through fully enough to make it a negative call. So I think that's a really big point for me, is thinking about what's the upside of making this random call, if not overthinking it, as opposed to the downside. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen if I make this call and just didn't think everything through fully enough? Another thing is there something actively stimulating I can do? I feel like I constantly feel the need to be stimulated by things. So that's apparently a piece of the enthusiasm subtrait. And then as far as assertiveness, it's not one of my strongest traits, but I really do enjoy challenging what someone thinks. That if something I say can make them kind of break what they've been thinking so far, that's always a really big positive for me. So knowing that going into a sales call, as an example in my daily work, is something that's really helpful. If I can think that I have the potential to change their mind or invite them to a new way of thinking when I pick up the phone and dial. As far as neuroticism, I'm really low on that, both on the withdrawal and volatility subtraits. So it's kind of easier for me to ask myself, am I really likely to suffer a significant amount of stress from doing this thing? Like, it's easier for me to just tell myself to suck it up and do it than it is for some other people, because it's actually not crippling for me most of the time. And that typically doesn't add up, or it adds up a lot slower if I tell myself that on a daily basis compared to some other people. So it's a fair thing for me to use as a motivational tool to just fucking deal with it. So I mean, the feeling of being overwhelmed is really unlikely, and really very unlikely to take me by surprise. And then as far as openness to experience goes, one of the biggest things is, can I do something creative to kickstart my work? One thing I really enjoy about my role, my sales role right now, compared to some of the cold calling and stuff that I've done in the past, is that I actually get to sometimes make my own outreach campaigns. I get to think about the way I want to communicate with someone. I don't have to follow someone else's script. So I really do get to move things around and think creatively about it, even if sales is relatively simple compared to some other jobs out there. If there's a new idea pulling at me, I can expose myself to trying it and experimenting with it. Also, just art in general is a really motivating thing for me. If I get to listen to music, if I can look at something that's beautiful and inspiring, those are things that really help me work harder, or at least they feel like a break when I expose myself to them. So that's something that I can consider as like a way for me to recharge and gain energy. And then as far as like a specific question, one that I wrote down was, what's an avenue on this that someone probably hasn't tried before? So is there a way that I can change my patterns for today just for my own satisfaction? It might not be the most efficient thing, but if it keeps me happy and motivated and able to work harder, it's easier in the long run. It makes me better at my job because I just got to change something around. And if I can do that on a daily basis, then at points for me, that's, playing off my strengths to improve, hopefully, what I do if I'm measuring it and paying attention to it. So as far as the intellect subtrait, specifically, I can ask, like, what's a complex problem that this type of work faces? What's something that everyone else seems to keep running into or complain about? How could we change that? How could we flip it on its head? Is there one thing new I can learn quickly this morning as I walk into work about what I'm doing before I get started, and then I can apply it? Can I change a rule that's either unspoken or explicitly talked about what I'm doing? And then as far as openness, like, is there something beautiful I can expose myself to? Song, art, poem, or what's beautiful about what I'm doing? How can I look at the work that I'm doing as art, as a creative expression of myself? And then finally, I made things that are like a take a break checklist for me. So laugh at something, see something that brings me joy, talk to someone, help someone with their problem, write, watch people be good at things. That YouTube channel, People Being Awesome, is one that I've, since asking myself these questions, found a lot of enjoyment out of by watching in the mornings. I can write, I can consume art, I can find something that makes me think deeply. Sometimes I just want to read like philosophy, or I want to read forums that make me kind of like challenge what I'm thinking, and then maybe I, not without getting into like the internet arguments and flame wars, share my own piece and then get back to what I'm doing. Or just deferring gratification. I can just tell myself it truly can wait. Work on decreasing the fear of missing out is one of the big things for me. Is I will procrastinate because there's so much that I just want to do this second, and it feels like if I don't read it now, then I'm just going to forget about it, and then that's knowledge that I'm never going to have. Or I can just read a bit. I started bringing the book, this is like the first fiction I've read in a while other than Life of Pi, is American Gods. And so I started packing it in my backpack and reading, 3 or 4 pages of it while wanting to take a break from work for a second. And these have all been really helpful thoughts for me, and I wanted to share it because I thought maybe that if you're taking this test, if you're going through the same thing, particularly if you're worried like, oh, conscientiousness seems to be like the main factor for being successful in life, at least traditionally, how do I work around that? Because like it or not, that kind of matters unless you want to just throw it all to the wind, but most of us don't. So I thought that by sharing this, it might be helpful for some of you, and talking about it is helpful for me. So that's it, and I'll talk to you guys later.